What is the correlation between narcissistic abuse, narcissists, and sex addiction? What does it actually look like? How does it match up? Maybe you've wondered if individuals that are diagnosed with sex addiction might actually be narcissists, or narcissists that might be sex addicts. How do narcissists use sex addiction as an excuse for their behavior? Was your narcissist a sex addict? Did it seem like that was all that was on his mind, or that was all that the focus was? In this video, we're going to dive into some of the aspects of the connection between the two, narcissistic personality disorder and sex addictions. Now, a lot of narcissists have addictions, period, but today we're going to focus specifically on sex and why a lot of times it connects a lot with what's happening inside the abusive relationship, of how it feeds into the sense of entitlement and ownership, how it feeds in different pieces of what we're going to dive into today. Okay. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel providing awareness about narcissistic abuse. The whole goal is to help people understand the toxicity of narcissistic abuse, what it's caused, what it's done, how it's destroyed, and to try to be able to use examples and ideas from what I've experienced and when talking to different clients of saying, hey, this is what's going on, to try to help wake you up, to move you in a place to help you grow, change, heal, and develop. You can start that journey today by going to escapetoxicity.com. It's our 7-day challenge for healing to try to help you move forward in understanding narcissism, narcissistic abuse, the guilt that comes with being with a narcissist, and also to understand the formula that we teach of helping you break free from the triggers that control you, that leave you in the trauma bond, that leave you ruminating, that leave you stuck mentally and emotionally with a toxic person, whether you're with them or whether you're not. So when we talk about this piece of addiction, sex addiction is a popular one inside narcissistic abuse. Oftentimes because of the entitlement, because of the piece of like, this makes me feel good. And because for a lot of people, it's sex. So like, it does feel good, but it needs to feel good in the right context and in the right way. For a narcissist, a lot of times that means your opinions, your feelings don't matter. And instead, it needs to be whatever they want in the moment. Now, first and foremost, when we talk about this aspect of sex addicts, one of the things I want to bring up is there is a decent amount of times, I believe, that narcissists are misdiagnosed as sex addicts. Of like, hey, this person's not a narcissist, he just has a sex addiction. Like sometimes you will see this where narcissists will go into therapy or counseling and they get this label. They're like, oh, I'm a sex addict. This is what it actually is. This is what's going on. And they might use that, we'll see in a moment, of it being just an excuse. But sometimes there'll be overlapping patterns of behaviors of what this actually looks like. Of like, oh, he's not a serial cheater because he's narcissistic. He's a serial cheater because he's a sex addict. And oftentimes it sounds different or it sounds better. Both conditions a lot of times have this preoccupation with sex, like a constant need of validation, like always looking for another person. So like it might be an aspect of sex, it might be an aspect of emotional, but it's this idea of like, let me have this communication, let me have this validation, this attention from other people. Narcissist has this insatiable desire of attention, of like, I want to have attention on me. I want to have the eyes on me. I want to have the focus on me. And covert is more like hidden in the corner of like, I still want the attention, but I just don't want it to be on me. It's a little bit nuanced, okay? But a lot of times you'll see this in the aspect of a sex addict. Like they want attention. Like they want another person to think they're the best thing ever. They want another person to love them, to worship them, to serve them. And it has the same desire as attention. But it's crucial to be able to understand the difference between genuine sex addiction. Like this piece stems from emotional and psychological issues. And narcissistic behaviors are driven typically by a need of control and power. Now, the interesting thing about sex addiction and narcissism, and it goes very much hand in hand with shame avoidance. Narcissists are avoiding shame at all costs. Like I need to avoid things that are going to make me feel bad, or that are going to tell myself that I am bad. When you bring in sex addiction, it's another piece that involves the shame cycle of going through this aspect of shame over and over and over again, shame to sedate to shame, and back and forth to try to feel better about something that they feel bad about. And so they do the same act and it produces more shame. You see this at the same time where narcissists are running away from shame. So you can see how this connects, but it also pushes away at the same time. When you do this, and when this happens over and over and over again, you get someone who's addicted to it, but is also repulsed by it, but is still addicted to it. It's almost like the idea that not every drunk wants to be a drunk, but they're addicted to it. And so until they actually change that thought pattern and that process and remove the opportunity, they're not actually going to get healthy from it. They're not actually going to get free. So even with this aspect is like, if you have a narcissist that's a sex addict, you're probably not going to be able to work through the narcissism until they start getting help for the sex addiction. With sex addiction, it's also just as all other addictions, it's just meant as a way of sedating, hiding, suppressing the feelings and the shame that they have inside. So you might have a narcissist that's engaging in sexual behavior, that's engaging in cheating, okay, seeking out multiple partners, boosting up his ego, helping feel better, a sense of superiority of like, oh, I'm the best thing ever. This behavior sometimes will look like sex addiction. Like people will be like, wait a second, he might just be a sex addict. But in reality, it might be a manifestation of narcissistic tendencies and a means of just exerting power and control. Okay, this was like the mind-opening piece to me when I went to a sex addiction intensive. And I was there for multiple days going through this, being like, hey, this is for sex addicts. And as I walked away from that, it was comforting and concerning at the same time. Comforting because I'm like, I'm not a sex addict. Like after going through that, after hearing from a bunch of different people, after seeing what it is, like, yes, I get myself involved in relationships, but it's not because I'm a sex addict. At that point, it was also concerning because I was like, I think I know what it is, because I already knew about narcissistic personality disorder, and I was looking for something else to be able to blame it on, instead of it being me, instead of it being my fault. Which is why a lot of times, point number 2, narcissists will use sex addictions as an excuse. Okay, I'm a sex addict, so you have to give me what I want. I'm a sex addict, so like it's really not my fault. Like this is just who I am. By claiming to have an addiction, a lot of times they'll shift their focus away from manipulative behavior, what they're actually doing behind the scenes. So like you see them cheating, you see them hurting, and then they're like, but I'm just a sex addict, so like I can't really help it. Trying to make you not even notice and kind of like view them as the victim versus them being the perpetrator of actually hurting you, of actually going to the place of where they keep cheating on you over and over and over again, but blaming it on something that they quote unquote don't have any control over. Okay. By claiming to have an addiction, they shift your focus away. It's distraction. It's smoke and mirrors. And they try to make you get to the place where you have sympathy for them, where you're like, oh my gosh, like let me help them. Let me work with them. This manipulation is purposeful and allows them to avoid taking responsibility. This aspect of using sex addiction as an excuse is the same aspect as gaslighting, as future faking. It's all smoke and mirrors to move you away from the actual topic, to be able to say like, oh, have sympathy for me. Like understand I'm the victim when they're the ones that just hurt you. Like they will avoid taking responsibility at all costs, even though it's hurting you, even though it's causing emotional, mental, physical, sexual harm to you. They'll cause it. And they'll continue moving forward in their destructive patterns. Okay? This happens over and over and over. And you'll see this be very destructive in your life when they get together with someone and contract an STD because they're not being safe, because they don't really care about that a lot of times. And then you're left with the damage. A narcissist, oftentimes it's caught cheating, might get to the place where they claim, hey, I have a sex addiction. Like, this is just what it is. I just have a lack of control. Like, I just need help. I need to work on this. I can't actually fix this. Portraying themselves as the victim. This tactic, again, allows them to blame and avoid taking accountability and responsibility. It leaves you confused. It leaves you uncertain of like, well, if they're a sex addict, like, what am I supposed to do? I guess give them more sex and that'll make them just only a sex addict to me. No, it's not going to help. Because the majority of time a narcissist is using I have a sex addiction as an excuse for their abusive behavior. The other thing that I want to be able to point out is sex addiction for a narcissist is oftentimes this tool of entitlement and ownership. Like it fulfills the bucket of a narcissist of like, oh, I'm actually getting what I want because 1, I'm entitled to you, and 2, I own you. And people always get upset and get frustrated when I say this, but a narcissist thinks that they own you. He does. I thought that part of love was me controlling other people, me owning other people, me saying, you are mine. So then why are you going out and hanging with these people? Why are you interacting with someone else? Like, you are mine. Why would you actually do that to me? Why would you reject me by going out with your friends? Okay, so sex addiction becomes another means to fulfill this need of attention and validation and control. This is piece of like, hey, if I can actually do this, it helps me feel better because I'm entitled to you. It feeds this sense of entitlement and ownership of other people, provides a platform, like a way for them to be able to exert power and exploit vulnerable people for their own gratification. Okay? Narcissists will do this over and over and over again because they're like, hey, I'm entitled to you. Like, you are meant to be in my life to serve me, to please me. Like, we're married, so that means I get what I want. Marital coercion, we talked about earlier today. Like, that's the whole aspect of like continuing to do this over and over and over, but blaming it on something, saying, oh yeah, it's just a sex addiction, I can't really control it, but it's just fulfilling that aspect of entitlement and ownership. Okay, you're going to see this happen over and over and over, using other people just as objects. You are just a transaction to satisfy their sexual desires. Like, viewing you as possessions, transactions of like, hey, I'll give you this, let me get this. I'll give you money, let me get sex. I'll give you a car, let me get sex. Like, there's multiple things, okay? But they believe they're entitled to you. So as a result, it throws out consent, it throws out your boundaries, and it just says, hey, I get to do what I get to do when I want to do it. Then we're back to the marital coercion, okay? If you're struggling with this and you're like, hey, I see this in my life. I see the narcissist doing this consistently, and he's blaming it on sex addiction. I don't know what to do. Please reach out for help. You can reach out to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones, or if you're like, hey, I just need to understand narcissism because he's been blaming it on sex addiction, but I think it's something more than that. Then go to escapetoxicity.com. 7-day challenge to healing, to start you on that process and help you move forward in understanding more about narcissistic abuse. escapetoxicity.com. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, rate, review, just share this with another person. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much. If you're watching today, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.